Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today, we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. Today's video is going to be for standard best of one. We're going to be taking a look at the top decks leading into like Diamond to Mythic rank towards the end of the month while folks are trying to push for that top 1200 or top 250 Mythic placement. As always, we get the data from UntappedGG, what you see on the screen. It's a companion tool that aggregates your win rate with other users, gives us a whole bunch of cool stats. Link is in the video description if you want to get started today with it. I'll paste all the deck lists, timestamp them, do all that. One kind of programming note I just want to mention, I'll do a dedicated post, but I've been having some medical issues lately that's going to likely lead to a surgery. Don't have exact details yet, but I'm kind of in and out various degrees of pain. So while I still try to get out the schedule as is, I'm obviously going to prioritize health over Magic videos, but so if you see kind of more sporadic videos in the next little bit, you'd likely notice a reduction in the amount of gameplay content. I'm just trying to manage both content, real work, and my well-being. So I just wanted to kind of give a note out with that, but we'll jump into it. We're going to look at popularity of the day first, and then we'll look at the individual decks. As we had for the last couple of weeks, Mono Red Aggro is the top deck in terms of volume of games played, 20%, 1 in 5 games. Mono White is at 10%. Golgari Midrange is at 7.1%. We're not going to cover Golgari here, but you'll see kind of here with the daily win rate and just a couple of the accumulated deck lists. The Golgari deck was like 53 one version, 48% another version. So it's doing kind of poorly this week. We got 10 decks we're going to cover today, and it wasn't even in the top. Like, I could have gone probably 15 deep before I got to the Golgari deck. 4 color control is the domain control deck at 5, Selesnya Enchantments at 5, Azorius Control at 5, then you got Mono Blue Tempo, and then Esper Control at 3. Kind of looking at the popularity decks, kind of the notable thing here is we see Mono White really decrease, where at one point, like the Mono Red deck was 31%, Mono White was 23% at the beginning of the season. We're likely going to see a similar uptick again in like 2 days when the ladder resets. But for the time being, we see like Mono White kind of decrease quite a bit from like its high point of 23, pretty much getting halved. Golgari keeps increasing in terms of popularity despite the relatively anemic win rate. I know some folks are doing well with it, but like cumulative average is showing that it's not doing as good as some of the other ones. Mono Blue, it's more of a budget deck, so you kind of see ups and downs. Everything else is kind of static in this bunching here. So kind of interesting to see there, like folks still jamming Golgari despite the win rate. So like I said, we are looking Diamond to Mythic rank. We have 100,000 games of Magic played for the week from October 22nd through to the 29th. And the top performing deck, not only the most played, top performing, is Mono Red Aggro at 64.3%. We've had a lot of different variations of Mono Red. Let's get this a little bit bigger on screen. But this version is just a bunch of clean 4-ofs. Some of them I'm a little skeptical of, like the full 4 Feldon seems a little iffy. Well, good in the mirror. We've seen them completely drop off Charming Scoundrel in lieu of the full Feldon package. Feldon's good into the mirror because it forces awkward blocks, but drawing multiples feels pretty bad. The Charming Scoundrel helps with mana ramp. It can give Wicked tokens, help enable the Godric as well. You see the same kind of top end, 3 Godric, 3 Squeeze, since they're legendaries. Still the Bloodthirsty package with Lightning Strike, Play with Fire. This version's on full 4 Monstrous Rage, the Phoenix Chicks, so Spears, Kumanos kind of mixed into there. So really kind of the weekly trend is dropping Charming Scoundrel in this list and then going up to the full Ronin package, and then the full, sometimes like Monstrous Rage is a 2 to 4 of in some of the lists. Kind of interesting to see that. Like, I don't necessarily agree with this line, especially because it can't block, so it's worse on like the back end, but it's putting up stats 64%. So going lean mean, we never block, we only attack. The next deck really kind of caught me off guard. Gruul Aggro at 64%. So literally just losing out by 0.3% in the matchup. Now, they're calling it Gruul. It's pretty close to Mono Red, Splash Green. I always like posting these decks because like I've literally posted decks where every single card in the deck is red and then it just plays Samut. So I call it mono red Samut, obviously acknowledging Samut is the outlier there. People are like, well, actually, it's Gruul. It's pretty much a mono red deck. It plays like a mono red deck. It's just splashing a green there. You still have kind of your core. We see the same cards there, like a Kumano, Swiss Spears, Monstrous Rage, Phoenix Chick. Again, full 4 Feldon. This version's on full 4 Invasion of Tarkir in the main. We have the Yavimaya Iconoclast, which can be kicked and come down for an additional 1/1 and haste to the end of turn, so 4/3 attacking Trampler in. We have Godric's that come in. We have Samut. Samut's kind of a card draw engine in this deck. Coming down, any of these other effects, like everything in the deck has haste, pretty much. Yavimaya has haste, you just got to work a little harder on it. And then a card that we really not seen any play with, Rampaging Raptor. Dinosaur deck is, or dinosaur format is coming soon. See how the Raptor form like kind of falls in line with a dedicated Dino deck. But the big thing here, when it deals damage, you can have it deal that much damage to target Planeswalker or battle. So you can also hit the battle for 4 and kind of indirectly flip it in that regard. Your mana base, you got like Rock Veils, Copperline Gorge, just a full Gruul package, one of each of the channel lines mixed into there. We then move to Azorius Soldiers at 61.5%. This is pretty much the stock list that we've had in the past. The biggest difference, like I mentioned last week, in Best of 1, it's the more creature dense version. In Best of 3, it tends to be the more tempo oriented version with counter spells and kind of more of the flash threats. Like we see Myrel being played in the Best of 1 version. The way the mana is kind of, or like the decks that we see, like Mono Red has a harder time killing this unless it uses multiple spells. The white based decks usually have exile creature based for like the creature mirrors. So it is a card that can kind of run away with things and punish at instant speed abilities. Sky Strike Officer draws you cards, Veteran puts counters and kind of insulates against removal. You have your Lord effects with Valiant Veteran, and then Harbin's kind of the combo element. You have enough soldiers, they fly over your opponent in that respect. Just do one zoom out because then I can fit the whole deck list. Full 4 fortified beachhead in this version. Only a single Otawara. The other Best of 3 version usually plays 2 Otawara, 2 Iganjo, I believe. But this one's just cleaner mana base with that. Plaza Heroes, given that you incidentally have a number of legendaries as well that you can protect. And most importantly, the Myrel or the Harbin in this matchup. From one white-based aggro deck to another, 61% for mono white humans. So this version here, it's the full Knight Errant of Eos version. We see 2 ossifications in the mana base, or in the creature, in the deck list. Sunday morning, haven't had my full cup of coffee yet. Brutal Cathars is your other removal. Return to like Guardian and New Benalia in this list. So it's kind of an ode to a slightly dated version. I think a lot of them have taken out the Guardians. But Intrepid Adversary is your Lord style effect. In this version here, it's only playing 22 basics. You could definitely play an Iganjo. I would play 1 to 2 Mishra's Foundries. Just have some sort of creature land in here mixed in. You're getting no utility out of your mana base while everything comes into play untapped. You're not getting that, edge case, just having a creature land kind of mixed into there. But 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, draw a bunch of cards, kind of smack into your opponent that way there. We then go to kind of the control corner of the next 3 decks, all varied control decks. Starting off with Esper Control at 61%. And this is a deck where I always say folks don't necessarily build like with the intention of Best of 1 versus Best of 3. I think this deck's actually pretty well built for Best of 1 to some degree. You have the full pack, like 3 knockout blows in this deck. So this is a 1 mana removal spell. 20% of your matchups are going to be mono red on average. Well, how about a 1 mana spell that kills any other creature and also gains you 2 life? This deck's also on full 4 Path of Peril. Again, early remove sweeper deals with most of these aggressive decks. While it leaves their 3 drops behind, 3 mana kind of catches you up. You can also use it for 6 mana. Some marches, go for the throats. So you have a little bit less targeted removal. You have the shield Edict. I'd probably not play the one Make Disappear and opt to just go for like Cut Down instead. Even like similar to March, I would probably just play Cut Down. Or like another Go for the Throat. You have Void Rends, Celestis, the Dissipate. You have a Planeswalker package of Jace. Teferi slows the sunset, works nicely with the Celestis to kind of net you mana. Wandering Emperors. The life gain from Teferi is also pretty reasonable. Every turn potentially gaining 2 life, just offsets some of the damage being dealt. You also have a Kaya on the top end. So Memory Deluge for card advantage. Katos is a card that I don't know necessarily if you want it in best of one. While it can attack like your opponent's like graveyard, steal their cards, it's not really like you're gonna take like a Kumano from them. You can get some cards, but I don't know. I think this one's a little bit. There's probably better cards you can play in the 5-drop slot. I would probably just play another Wandering Emperor, to be honest, or another Sunfall. Sunfall here is nice. You could potentially turn 4 Sunfall in this deck. 2 Breaches on the top end. So we're seeing some configurations of these control decks to address the best of one meta, which is important. Moving on, we go to Azorius Control, which is pretty much in the line, 61%, and I think this is another deck that's reasonably situated for the best of one meta. We have the Elspeth Smite here, 3 damage. We have the Faithful Manding that sets up the draw. So this is the mill version of the deck. So Tesuvian Mindbreaker, you're throwing it into your graveyard, then you unearth it for 4 mana. It attacks, your opponent mills half their library. You combine that with Jace, and oftentimes you can mill them out with 1 cast of Jace after this. You have sweepers in Depopulate and Sunfall. You see another similar effect in a 3 mana deal with the early aggression with temporary lockdown. Full force Sunset Revelry, so a lot of ways to gain life and kind of stop the early game of your opponent here. You have the Field of Ruins, Tranquil Cove to instantly gain you life. The only thing I would probably say with this deck, I'd probably try to find space for 1 Myra, just to have an alternative win condition. While Mill is there, sometimes the games are just going to go long. You're going to run out of resources, so having a way to just make creatures seems pretty good. Like we see 2 Myrex in the Esper Control deck that has arguably tougher mana conditions. You could definitely play it in this deck. And then we go to 4-color control. So Domain Ramp Control, 58%. And this deck here, we actually see again some innovation in the best of one meta, where we see some copies of Sunset Revelry. In the past, we've seen just like slightly different configurations, maybe like the full Virtue package, full for Atraxa. So just shifting the top end a bit to address like the early game. Gaining you 4 life, giving you a couple blockers can be the difference between living and dying in a lot of games, just getting you to that turn 4-5 where you can kind of pivot. Usually against a lot of these creature decks, they're trying to like rush you for all the damage. A Sunfall oftentimes can either stabilize you to the point of winning, same with like Arcane. Ramping into your top end, you have Atraxa, Herd Migration, Virtue is kind of your win conditions in addition to the Angel, 2 Myrex in the mana base as well. Then popping over, we got Selesnya Enchantments, 57.2%. And this is a deck, again, from like past weeks, pretty much unchanged. I made the comment the last weeks as well, but I think personally, instead of playing 4 Calyx, I would do a 3-2 split with Catilda. And Catilda in a heavily aggressive meta is very useful. Gaining life, also another enchantment on the backside that can suit up something, but you're casting enchantments, you're buffing things up. Generous Visitor, Kami, and Calyx all care about enchantments being cast or entered in the battlefield, getting really big attackers. Mashiko then does like a huge bonus pump. You have stuff with Trample, thanks to either Kami or Audacity on a creature. If you like Audacity a Jukai. Naturalist, you have a lifelink Trampler that I think gets a huge boost. Weaver Harmony's a Lord that also doubles enter the battlefield or activated abilities. So double draw, double exile, double Mashiko pump, kind of all mixed into there. Skrelv can also provide an unblockable creature with the Mashiko pump. One thing to note though, and it's important, Skrelv will give protection. Oh no, just as hexproof, sorry. Giver of Ruins is the other condition. Sorry, a dog walked by my house and my dog was not pleased. Giver of Ruins is protection, so with the Auras deck you have to be mindful. Like, so say if you give protection from green and you have an Audacity on your creature, it falls off. Skrelv specifically hexproof, not protection. So slightly different wording in that regard. You'll notice the 10 basics, so a little bit tweaked of mana base, no Bezeju or anything like that. trying to maximize the number of basics for ossification in the deck. Then go to Abzan Superfriends at 55. So I'm going to be honest, there's a glut of decks that were like 54 to 55 and a half. There was like Esper Legends. There was like a couple decks we've seen every single week. If you want to play those decks, they're still reasonable, but these decks are cooler looking. They're kind of unique, and they're all in the same glut. So I featured the new decks as opposed to me talking about going Skrelv into Thalia, into going to Rafine, into Shieldred. You can hear that audio literally every week. But Abzan Superfriends. So this is a creatureless deck, and it's just got a lot of removal. So if you want to kill everything over and over again, and then hopefully never run into your opponent's control deck, average duration 8.4. I'm actually curious what, so 7, 6.6, 6, yeah, so taking the best of one games to the longest duration possible. So it's built around Up the Beanstalk. So it cares about casting cards 5 or more mana. You gain a bunch of card advantage. You got March of Otherworldly Light and March of Wretched Sorrow. Both can be cast for 5 mana or more as they scale later in the game. This gets you card advantage, gains you life, exile, catch-all removal, cut downs, go for the throats, communes help you find your Up the Beanstalks, lands, or like Virtue Persistence. Celestis kind of loops. Your win conditions are White Sun's Twilight or a Sunfall, or your creature lands in the Restless Fortress or Myrex. So this deck is literally just killing everything. It's probably the one that someone writes on Reddit, like, why does my opponent hate fun? And they do a screenshot of like 14 different removal spells. Expel the Interlopers, yeah, just a bunch of removal kind of mixed into there. Choose your different, how do you want to kill the thing? Not if you can kill the thing, how do you want to kill the thing? And then just really hope your opponent doesn't play a Planeswalker. Then the last deck, Dimir Midrange, 54%. Now, we've had Dimir Midrange in the past, but this is a little bit different. We've had like the Fairy Mastermind, like basically mono black splash blue, but this is kind of more of a Dimir Hitotsuku Inkari deck. Another card we haven't seen too much after its initial hype at the beginning of the set that it came out in. So enters the battlefield, draw 3, put 2 cards, so you basically brainstorm. And then when it dies, you exile the top card of your library. Your opponent loses life equal to mana value. And if it's an instant or sorcery, you can cast mana. You kind of cheat into play to breach the multiverse, Gix command, get a whole bunch of value, drain them, cast them. Shieldrids, Jace's in here, Kaido. So it's like Dimir Planeswalkers with like a back-end combo. 7, 9 pieces of direct removal between edicts, go for the throats, and cut downs, and then some make disappears also scattered in there. 3 Myrex and mana. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.